Hey guys! Okay, I think I'm crooked. I'm trying to be not crooked. Okay, yeah, that may be a little better. And I have things to show you today. So I'm doing the whole, I flipped the Facebook Live thing around so that I can show you the books and the covers are right, but it's freaking me out because it's not the way it normally is. I'm such a creature of habit, aren't we all? Okay, I'm gonna move you a little bit further away, but if I get you too far, then I can't see you. I can't see what you're saying. Hey, Diana Kennedy, how are you? Okay, and, well, see, this is messing me up. I'm moving over here because your comments come up over there. It's weird. So the slightly spatially challenged, confused person talking to you today is Pam Barnhill. Hi, it's so nice to meet you. I am a homeschooling mother of 3. Dawn is here. Dawn is my sidekick. She's going to be dropping links for you down in the comments. Anyway, homeschooling mom of 3, 2 of whom are done with their schoolwork, 1 of whom is not. Yeah, and which always throws me off. Oh my gosh, Amy, he was a genius. I just don't even know how he did it. Anyway, I have 3 homeschooling podcasts, and I provide help and support to homeschool moms who might be wondering, can I do this? And, how do we make this good? And that's the kind of help and support that I provide. So we're going to talk about poetry today because I know that poetry is something that really kind of intimidates a lot of you, and it shouldn't. But it does. It kind of intimidates a lot of you. And I want to tell you not to be intimidated by poetry because it's actually a lot of fun. And hopefully by the end of this, I will have convinced you that it's a lot of fun. And you'll at least want to try it out a little bit because April is National Poetry Month. Okay, Dawn is sitting there with links to the podcast, so I have to put those up there. We have 3 podcasts that we run. See, look, she jumped up as soon as I said it. The Homeschool Snapshots podcast, where we interview homeschooling moms about their ins and outs, their trials and tribulations, all the wonderful things that happened, all the great things, all the bad things, and we talk about tips and tricks and resources and ideas and encouragement. It's a fun 30-minute podcast. Then we have Your Morning Basket, which is more about what to do in your morning time, and we're going to be talking about morning time some today, but what to do in morning time to bring a little bit of truth, goodness, and beauty to your homeschool day. And we call it morning time. Really, you could do it at any time of day, but it's just a time where the whole family comes together to learn together, and it's a wonderful time. And one of my children reminded me today that we have not been doing ours lately, and so we need to get back on that. Sometimes we fall out and we don't do it for a little while, and we have to, get a kick in the rear to get back into it. And then we also have the podcast, the Homeschool Solutions podcast, which is basically an audio blog. So bloggers, different bloggers, I think this week it's me. It's about planning. That's about all I can tell you. It's coming out tomorrow. But we read our blog posts. So 10 minutes for washing the dishes or walking the dog or something like that. It gives you a little 10-minute snippet to listen to that where you might otherwise have not got to read a blog post. Okay, so let's talk about poetry. And the very first thing I'm going to point you to for poetry resources are 2 podcasts that we've done. The first one is for people who are, well, let's start with wanting to enjoy poetry. So if you are wanting to enjoy poetry, the best podcast we've got for that is Your Morning Basket, episode 8 with Nicholas Ireland. And this was a really wonderful podcast because Nicholas's approach to poetry is that you should start with wonder. You should start with the wonderment of poetry and the enjoyment of poetry, and that's where you should begin. And it is by doing that then that you are going to build an enjoyment of it. So don't start with your child by picking the poems apart. Well, what this does is it alleviates some of the pressure off of you, because a lot of you are probably sitting there going, I don't know how to pick a poem apart. I am not an expert on rhyme scheme and meter and what the meter's called and literary devices like allusion and simile and metaphor. I don't know anything about that stuff, so you're kind of slightly intimidated by it anyway. And you don't have to do that. You have to start with the wonder or the enjoyment of poetry. I'm going to move that around just a little bit because it's annoying me that the words are across my face. So anyway, that's one of the things that you can do. Is start with wonder. Nicholas talks all about it. He outlines everything. It's fabulous. It's a wonderful podcast to listen to. I don't remember it being particularly long, maybe about 40-45 minutes at the most. And he really does a good job with it. And we have a basket bonus for you there on that. So basket bonus, what you can do is you enter in your email address and we send you this little printable. It does put you on our email list, but we promise we're very nice. We send you good things all the time. About once a week, twice a week, depending on which list you get on. And it's a printable cheat sheet for poetry. So it kind of does give you some of that vocabulary to use when you're talking with your children. So that's a great podcast episode. Another really good one that we have is one with Andrew Pudawa. So this is Your Morning Basket episode 2. And on this one, Andrew talks about memorizing poetry. So why is it even important to memorize poems? Why is this a big deal? And what does it mean? So, hold on. Okay. What does it mean to memorize poems, and why should we do this, and why is it helpful to memorize? And so I love this episode. It's one of our longer ones, and I really enjoyed talking with Andrew Pudawa, and I think you'll get something really good out of that one. And the basket bonus for that episode, what we actually did was choose 3 poems for you to help you get started. So if you're like, I have no idea what to do, or my kids are going to revolt at this whole poetry thing, because we chose really fun ones. My assistant Mary Ryder helped me pick those poems, and she chose great ones. And then I read them and recorded MP3s. So you could use those to play over and over again and have your kids read along with them. And then we also made you a printable of the poems as well, so you could print it out and give your kids a copy. So if you wanted to get started memorizing poems, there is like a cost-free way to start with 3 poems with your kids right there. Andrew Pudawa also has a great program called Linguistic Development Through Poetry Memorization. I own it. I don't have it with me. I've actually cut the binding off of mine and scattered the pieces throughout my morning time binder. But Dawn also uses it, and it's just fabulous. It is absolutely fabulous for helping your kids memorize poems. So it's just a lot of fun. It really is, Dana. It's so great. So, couple of places to get started with the idea of poetry. Let me share with you a few other resources. So if you're thinking, well, I don't know what's a good poem and what's a bad poem, and yeah, there are good poems and bad poems out there, but just about any anthology of poetry that you pick up for a child is going to have some good poems in there. And when you're starting, you really should start with what you enjoy. And it's totally okay not to start with really deep, heavy poems with your child, but to start with fun and light poems. One of the first poems they have you memorize in, linguistic development through poetry memorization is Ooey Gooey. Ooey Gooey was a worm. So that's a really great poem to start with. But don't feel, what's the word I'm looking for? Like you can't choose a good poem. It's really not as hard as you think it is. So what you need is a good poetry anthology. The Random House Book of Poetry, this is a really good anthology for kids. I love it. The poems are in here it's topical. Here's one about zebras, the people upstairs, sing a song of subways. There's poems in here about animals, so there's the animal topic. There's a seasonal section. We use that sometimes. And there's just some really great, fun poems for kids. Some longer poems and some shorter poems all in here. So it would be really hard to go wrong with one of the poems in here to start with, or a bunch of the poems in here to start with. This is really one of our favorite anthologies. Another good anthology is read aloud poems for young people, because a lot of times when you have kids, that's what you're going to be doing, is you're going to be reading the poems out loud. And it's good to enjoy that. It's good to enjoy reading the poems and hearing the sounds of the words and the rhythms kind of roll off your tongue, and kind of reveling in the sound of the language as you read it out loud. So this is another one that has some good poems in it. There is also a series of books called Poetry for Young People. Now, some of these we have found, sadly, some of these are out of print, and then others of them are not. So you kind of have to go by the poem or the poet. But even the ones that are out of print will often have, excuse me for 1 second. Can I help you?
Can I be in your Facebook Live?
Yes, come and say hello, quickly.
Hello.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.
Okay, she was just like hovering, so we had to let her get that out of her system. All right, so poetry for young people, some are out of print, but even some of the ones that are out of print, you can still find a really good deal on Amazon. And so basically what these books do is they give you a little bit of background on the poet in the beginning of the book, and kind of a little bit of biographical information about him or her, and then just a selection of poems from that poet. Now, Jessica says she likes some of them better than others, but you know, they all have a very good selection. I know she said that she didn't care for the Tennyson selections in this one as much as she did some of the other selections. So this is a really good one as well. Okay, so great. People are starting to drop comments with some of the things they like. So those are some, starting with an anthology or about a particular poet. Robert Louis Stevenson is a good poet to start with for kids. Hilaire Belloc. I love The Yak, is one of my favorite poems. It was one we memorized. As a friend to the children, commend me the yak, you will find him exactly the thing. So that's, I love Hilaire Belloc, and I'm trying to think of the other one who's really good for kids, and it's like totally slipping my mind. We had a whole, if Jessica was here, she could tell me, we had a whole set of limericks by him in one of the morning time lesson plans. So it'll come to me. Just give me a few minutes. And speaking of the morning time lesson plans, those are also a really great place to get some poetry resources and some poetry ideas. So in there we put, we choose a poem for you each week. Thank you, Amy. Yes, Edward Lear. I appreciate it. So we put a poem in there each and every week. We choose one for you, and then sometimes we'll have some picture books to go along with it about the poet or about the topic or things of that nature. And so those are in the Your Morning Basket lesson plans. We actually help you with choosing some of the poems in there as well. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is having fun with poetry. So maybe you're dipping your fingers into toes. I guess you'd be dipping your toes. You're dipping your toes into starting to read some poetry. So how could you have a little bit more fun with the poetry? So this is one way, is with a magnetic poetry kit. And I know you guys have seen these. These are a lot of fun. This one is actually first words for kids. And so these are for a beginning reader. And you can take these, you can actually work on, do them on the little box, because it comes in a metal box. So if you want to, the kids can actually do their poems inside the box, or you can spread them out across the refrigerator and have them put their poems together on that one. One of the things I love about this set is they're a little bit larger than your average magnetic poetry set. But you can find magnetic poetry sets in themes. So you have some love ones, and sometimes you can find a Shakespeare one, lots of different themes for that. So magnetic poetry set is one of the things, and this one actually comes with a little book that gives you some different ideas on how to play with the magnetic poetry stuff. So that's a really good idea. Another fun thing to do is have a poetry tea time. And don't get all upset about the language of poetry tea time. It doesn't have to be tea if your kids don't like tea, though my kids really love herbal tea. And it doesn't have to be fancy, though sometimes it is fun to pull out fancy, and it doesn't have to be elaborate. So you can cook something if you want to, but it's just as easy to go to your local grocery store and buy something already made. Or if your kids feel a little more special if you cook something, well then get cookie dough and cut it up and have them help you with the cookie dough. Sometimes we'll make banana bread or muffins. One time I hardly had anything in the house, and it led to me finding a scones recipe, and we made scones, and they turned out, no, it was shortbread. That was what it was. It wasn't even scones, it was shortbread, and it turned out great. I didn't have like something I needed to make it rise, and so I couldn't make something fancier, and we made shortbread, and it was wonderful. So you can make something, but you certainly don't have to. Little Debbie's, folks, works great for poetry tea time, especially the seasonal one with the sprinkles on it. And it's not something you'd feed your kids every single day, but for every once in a while, it would be wonderful. And if they want to drink lemonade in their teacup, whatever, but just have fun with it. Let everyone come to the table, recite a favorite poem, choose a favorite poem, pour over the poetry books and say, hey, this one looks good, and do that as well. Lynna Sutherland has a great post on my blog, and Dawn just dropped the link there talking about poetry tea time with all ages and some of the things she did with her kids to make it where everyone had a chance to host. And so the host actually had special duties, and it cut down on some of the fighting that her kids were experiencing over doing poetry tea time. So some great logistical help in that post that Dawn just dropped a link for there. So poetry tea time is a lot of fun. And then if you would like to go really big with your poetry tea time, you can do that too. Every once in a while, it is fun. And we haven't done this in a couple years because our back porch was hijacked by dogs, but I've reclaimed it. And so it's about time for us to do another big back porch poetry tea party. We did 2 a few years ago just because we had so much fun with them. And Dawn is going to drop the links for those. But we invited friends over. Everybody brought food. We kind of assigned the food out. We said to moms, hey, what do you want to bring? We threw out some ideas. I think we had about 5 or 6 families come. And we had things like the chicken and the egg by Ogden Nash. We had chicken nuggets and egg salad sandwiches. So that kind of went along with that poem. And we had the owl and the pussycat. There was a little tray for that. And around the outside were Rice Krispie treats in the shape of an owl. And on the inside were tuna sandwiches. And then we had other moms bring a veggie tray. And that went with celery by Ogden Nash. Or maybe, is celery by Ogden Nash or is it unknown? I can't remember. But anyway, so the food doesn't have to be that elaborate, but it was a lot of fun. And then we had so much fun with that one in the spring. We actually did it again in the fall, and we had fall-themed food. I think we made potato soup that time and had like hot spice cider. And so basically we ate our fun food, and then the kids all stood up on the back porch. We had like a little seating area out there. And the kids all stood up on the back porch and read or recited a favorite poem. And they were just all so pleased to get to do that. They just thought it was great, and they had a lot of fun doing it. They got to choose their poem and get up there and perform it for everyone, and they just had a really good time. So you don't always have to go that big. But every once in a while, if you want to do something fun, every once in a while, it's fun to go that big and do something like that. So just don't feel the pressure to have to do it all the time. So having a little bit of fun with poetry is a good thing as well. So lots of resources while I've been talking. I know Dawn has been dropping links for you guys to some more of our favorite poetry resources, either blog posts or books, those kinds of things. And so we've been putting those down there for you. But really just start with wonder and enjoy the poems. Don't feel any kind of pressure to do anything other than that for a very, very long time, especially if your kids are younger. So, happy National Poetry Month, you guys. And I'll be back next week, minus Dawn. I don't know what I'm going to do. Dawn is going to Cincinnati to the Great Homeschool Convention next week. So if you're going to be in Cincinnati at the Great Homeschool Convention, first of all, if you're anywhere near Cincinnati, go to the Great Homeschool Convention. See Dawn, see Sarah McKenzie, see a lot of the great speakers that they have there. But anyway, Dawn's going to be there, so if you see her, you know, she's an introvert, so she might not want a lot of hugs, but at least say hello and shake her hand. She would really like that. So be sure to do that. And I'm going to have to try to rope Jessica into doing Facebook Live with me next week, because if not, I'm going to be flying solo, and I just don't know how to do that. So you guys have an awesome week, but I will be back again, and we'll see you then. Bye.